Abstract Transmissions.
And hello, welcome to Abstract Transmissions. Today we have Ryan VanderWolk of Devil's Champion and Death Rattle. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, good to be here, brother.
I'm psyched to talk about nonsense for an hour and a half, 2 hours, man.
Yeah.
Fucking, it's badass. Last time we actually got to talk in length was like way back. Like actually talk about music. I think when we actually like talked for like maybe 20 minutes, like a full length of time, directly about music was back when we played that show with Fuckface Unstoppable. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, the Bam Margera.
We had a long, extensive talk. I remember that because fucking Bam was kind of like, I assumed Bam was kind of a dink, right? And I met him and I feel differently now,
He was
obviously.
actually pretty cool.
He's
Yeah,
a pretty cool guy. Like, he was nice. He was buying us drinks and shit. Like, he was a nice guy, a really nice guy. But my assumption was he was kind of a dick, because that's what happens. We make our assumptions and we go forth with it. And it usually turns out to be bullshit. But I just remember talking to him for about like 5 minutes about music, and then he just got trashed and it was a shit show. But
right.
I remember discussing a few things about music, and then it just kind of shifted and I started talking to you. We talked for like 20 minutes about the music scene and just how important it is for local bands to like work together and like actually support each other and lift each other up. And that's the thing I really love about I'm not a big fan of Mass. I'll be honest. Massachusetts never. Are you living in Mass now? Or are you living in?
No, I'm in Nashville. I've been in
That's
Nashville
what I thought.
for 5.5 years now.
Pretty sure Matt told me that you had a house or whatever in Nashville, right?
I'm in Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt had told me way back, and I was like, yeah, I don't blame him. I wouldn't live in Mass either. But most of the other guys live in Mass, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mass isn't terrible, but their laws are kind of shitty, especially if you're a libertarian.
Yeah.
It's fucking bonkers, fucking social programs and all that stuff, which is not a terrible thing, but in a lot of other ways, not so great. But we go into that. I do want to get to the thing real quick. That the music scene in Mass, like nowhere else, in my opinion.
It's a special place, and it's produced a ton of amazing bands.
Seriously.
And I think part of that just has to do with population.
It's
produced a ton of great bands. It's just been, Massachusetts has done quite well for producing, whether it's just rock bands or metal bands. It's awesome for that regard.
What do you think? Do you think it? Because I agree completely. I'd say right up even into Maine, like you see the whole like New England kind of music scene, but it obviously springs out of Boston, right? But the nice thing I think is that there's that like tight knit kind of like mixture of heavily, really like rural areas and then the heavily populated areas, but super close together. So,
well, I think part of what helps Massachusetts is you got basically three major population centers. You got Boston, you got Worcester, and then you got Springfield, and they're spread throughout the state. And I think that's a big part of it. Think of all the bands that came from Boston, Worcester, and then Western Mass. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
that makes a lot of sense.
And yeah, of course, and many more. And obviously, Killswitch is one of my all-time favorite bands. But I know you love them too.
Yep.
But it's also one of the best states for touring, because I mean, what band doesn't tour through Massachusetts?
No, yeah.
I mean,
it's unheard of.
If you're touring the states, you're hitting Massachusetts. I mean, that's just
absolutely
pretty much. You know what I mean? So it's I think that helps the cause too.
Yeah, and I mean, and then there's like Ralph's Rock Diner and all that shit like that. That is really staples of the music community in New England, but also for all touring musicians.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I worry about businesses like that right now. I think it's like, what the fuck are they gonna do? Are they gonna exist? It's like how and politicians. We now we'll go into politics. Fucking have dropped the ball completely on both sides, Republicans and Democrats.
This is the thing that I try to get across to people all the time, and from my studies, I can tell you that. And I'm a big student of economics. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've really gone down the wormhole.
Yeah.
And with a lot of history in there too. And one thing I've noticed is a central power could never know as much about its constituents as its constituents.
Right.
So the population knows more about how to handle things than the government can. So they try to do things at times to help, but they're causing more damage.
Yeah.
And you know,
Absolutely.
one thing that I think is anytime any debate or conversation or topic, whatever it is about when it comes to anything political, policy of the nature, or just even issues that we face in life, I think the biggest thing to understand is what lens do you view it through,
That's true.
and what do you determine to be a problem versus what someone else does. And one of the biggest things, like we had some back and forths online, you and I, we had talked about, if really you know economical stuff, such as just how the economy operates and different levels of success. I mean, we've got a hierarchy of people in this country and in the world of different levels of success, and uh, there has to be a hierarchy to exist. A hierarchy has to exist essentially for life to go on, and but people view that differently.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would say that, like, and it's not so much that the hierarchy has to exist, it's just going to inherently exist no matter what we
Well,
do.
well,
Same
it
with
is
class systems.
no
No matter
matter.
what we do, there's always poor people, there's always rich people.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, my brother and I have had long debates about this, but the way that I the way that I understand it, and I'm a big student of Thomas Sowell in particular, amongst many others, but a couple of things that painted a picture for me that changed my entire viewpoint on how I see everything is a couple of sayings. And obviously one of his books, which is silly, it's Basic Economics. I mean, it sounds, it's a life-changing book, but you wouldn't think an economics book would impact me so much, but it did, because it painted the picture. It didn't just take like the Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek ultimate, economics lens. It
Yeah,
took that, and then it also went a step further and said, let's look at all the real world examples that we can find.
right.
And a couple of things became apparent to me. Forget about system, forget about politics, forget about whatever the case may be. Inequality has existed since the beginning of time across all species, and it's something that cannot be removed. Inequality cannot be removed. There's no possible
So
way of doing
I
so.
I would argue that I think it possibly could in the future, but not right now because of the advent of technology and so on. But I guess where I'm going with that is that it's not so much that that it can't be that can't be changed. It's more so that that people are inherently bad, and that socialists like to view things in a utopian perspective. You know what I mean? They like to say that everybody is going to be good and everything's going to work
Right.
together, and we can all have a society where society's going to lift things up and we'll be butterflies, and that's just not fucking realistic. And it's never happened
Well,
like that ever in society
yeah,
ever. You know?
yeah. I,
And I
I,
don't
I
mean to
get.
trash on socialism,
Well, no, I mean the
but
ideas of socialism are obviously great ideas. I mean, it's just that
in theory, yeah,
and this is what I like to say to people, and I learned this from Thomas Sowell, and this totally changed my perspective. This one saying, okay, in life there are no solutions to any problem. There is none. You cannot solve any problem. There's only trade-offs. So in life, the saying is, in life there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs, and nobody's been able to stump this. Uh, Anytime you try to fix or adjust something, you have to trade something off, and you're not gonna. I would love to hear someone stump it, because I ask people this all the time and nobody can stump it, although someone did come up with a joke and said, well, don't tell a scientist there are no solutions, you know what I mean?
right. Yeah,
Which
or an
is,
engineer, yeah.
no, but I mean a solution as in like a liquid solution. That's
Oh,
what they're referring
got it.
to.
Ah,
that
okay,
that's what
okay.
that's what No, but
I was thinking an engineer because it's like
if
they're obsessed with the
the
answer, you know?
two things that changed my perspective, that were brought to me from guys like Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams and Shelby Steele and a lot of guys, and Milton Friedman,
Milton Friedman.
going back to Adam Smith economics. I mean, is that the world is born into poverty.
Yeah.
The world is not born into, and poverty is the norm and wealth is the exception.
Well, I would agree because it's based on scarcity of product, based on scarcity of material, right? So, like
Well,
everything that we
well, no,
have is material goods and stuff that we're
yeah,
bringing out of the the ground or whatever the fuck it is, to create other things to make material profit or to better our lives. But either way, it's going to cost work and labor in order to do so. Labor is people's time, thus money, so on and so forth, unless you're using
everything is a trade-off. And so when we talk about stuff like socialist ideas, we have to understand that if we're gonna go in that direction, we have to understand what the trade-offs are. Because a lot, when you said utopian, people view things as if we could actually solve these problems by doing this or that, and then we're not going to have problems anymore. The reality is that's an unattainable. And so I think when I said the lens of in which you view these problems, like for instance, I think inequality is not a problem, but I think poverty is a problem. And that's a completely different view, two different viewpoints. Some people view inequality as a problem. I don't view inequality as a problem. I view poverty as a problem. Inequality cannot be solved, but poverty can.
So,
and if we're
hold on, before you go, hold that thought, because I think that this is something that what you're saying is springboards off of that. Is I think I agree with you that that economic inequality is not the concern we should be worried about. It's making sure that there's a social safety net to create at least the very basic bottom that people aren't falling under, or at best a negative income tax like Milton Friedman proposed, which is, I think it's kind of like Yang's UBI, which was to give a basic fundamental flush of money into the base of society, so the bakers and the artists and whatnot will continue to produce, but also so we can keep things moving, because nobody's going to stop working for $1,000 a month. It's just not going to happen.
It's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because last year I did a ton of listening to Andrew Yang. I did a ton of research into UBIs.
I
looked into, as a matter of fact, places in Alaska have had UBI for I think 38 years now.
The oil
but they're basically dividend. Oil subsidies, and there's a lot to it. And again, anytime we talk about whether it's healthcare or this or that or all these different things, they work in different places, different ways. And there's so many factors.
But the problem with those things, like bureaucratic systems like welfare, like I'm on social programs. I'm disabled, walk with canes, and I'm have a bitch of a time getting around now. The worst thing in the world is dealing with social programs, but I'm on them and I fucking hate them. I think that they are useless bureaucratic garbage. They're people shuffling around papers, getting paid $40,000 a year to draw pictures of fucking dicks on paper, as far as I'm concerned. And they don't really solve anything. They're sitting in chairs and desks, when in reality, the simple solution is eliminate all that. Get rid of social, welfare programs, social programs, all that. Just give money to people. Boom. Done. That's it. Just give people $12,000 a year and fucking teach them how to use it when they turn 18. You were listening to a lot of what Yang was saying. I mean, the big thing is like, make sure people are well educated and know how to financially take care of themselves, how to do their own fucking laundry, for God's sakes. Teach people to go to trade schools instead of college. Fuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, because the theory, his theory does make a lot of sense, and he talks about the 13-point IQ drop of people who are constantly struggling financially and not sure.
I read that in his book.
94% of the nation can't come up with $500 on short notice.
Right.
And so that but it. It's really interesting, because, like I say, with the trade-offs, it's everything has a trade-off, and you have to make a determination on what your end goal is and what's worth trading off.
This brings us to the thing we were talking about earlier when you said, it's not possible for us ever to get to the point, basically where it pays for itself, right? That it's creating itself. And I think that with the advent of AI, we're going to be to the point where we can tax robot labor, basically freedom labor. Like, robots don't have to be paid. They work. And there's some energy costs, right? But it's so exponential that it just dwarfs those energy costs. And then, I mean, the AI is doing all the work, and we are just literally generating profit from that as a species. I'm not saying let's tax Amazon, the company. I'm not big on taxes. Taxes are theft, but
and that's another conversation we get into too, which is something that I feel very strongly about. But as far as the AI goes, you can't AI everything. And There's
I don't know,
you
man.
can't. Well,
Well,
can
no,
you
you're right. You're right.
can you
You
come
can't.
paint my house with
Uh,
send a robot to come paint my house?
it's
I mean,
it's gonna happen pretty soon.
it
I just saw a robot roofer that blew my fucking mind. It did a roof that it would take like 4 or 5 guys to do in like 5 hours or whatever. It did it in 25 minutes by itself.
right.
You had
So
guys lug the shit up on the roof, and it just like a 3D printer. Is fucking bananas.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to continually advance. I mean, first of all, the biggest threat is the truck drivers. That's the
yeah,
first shoe to drop. But I think, I want to go back to the hierarchy because I need
yeah.
one thing. There's two things that get massively overlooked when people talk about, poverty, inequality, the way the class system is, all these different things. Do you do you know what the biggest, most determining demographic is for income?
Socioeconomic placement where they are, where they live.
Well, yeah, like what is the big there? You've got age and
Well, that was
gender.
my answer. Is that where they live is the biggest
Well, you got age, race, gender, all
determination.
these different things. Okay, the biggest determining factor in income is not race or gender; it's age.
Oh, I thought it was location. All right.
No, it's age,
Huh.
because as you get older, you earn more, and so when you compare,
Sometimes you learn less though. Some people are just not skill
well,
traded,
okay,
you know.
for the majority. Okay, we're
Okay,
going
I
with
got you.
majority here. I mean, there's aberrations. You can find an aberration to
But
absolutely
yeah,
everything.
but no, but I mean, there's less of an aberration when it comes to AI eliminating a lot of those,
But that's
jobs
not
that
what
were
I'm talking.
factory
I'm not
jobs
talking
and
about AI. I'm talking about where we are at and where we've been at for thousands of years. I'm talking about human beings. So
just
where
mean
we are,
wisdom in general.
well, you gain in understanding the difference between capital and human capital. I mean, for instance, human capital is the skills and knowledge to accomplish things. Okay, without the human capital, you don't have the ability to advance a society or even your own life. So if you look back, look at the cavemen. Who do you think had more resources, us now or the cavemen?
Um, Definitely us now with all of the
No, no,
resources.
no. How? We've used up a lot of the resources.
Well, okay,
They
so the
had
abundance of
unlimited
resources in the
They
ground.
had
Okay,
unlimited, untapped resources. They had
I got you.
all the oil that's never been drilled. They had all the steel and all the. Okay,
I
so
guess it was contingent on how you worded it there. No, that makes sense. Is
yeah,
what you mean.
so the difference is that we have the human capital to harness these things and to advance our societies with it.
Yeah,
And
because they didn't even know that those things existed at
exactly,
all,
exactly,
So they
and
weren't really
so
resources for them if they weren't
exa-
in
exactly,
existence to them. As far as
that's
they
exactly
were
it.
concerned, it didn't exist. So, it
They
couldn't
didn't
be
have a clue.
used.
They didn't have a clue because they didn't have the human capital to understand. And as time went on, they started discovering more and more things. And now we are where we are today, where we have an unbelievable life we get to live. But what it is
But
it's
there's a
the
change that's happening though. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
yeah.
But because I'll forget because I'm scattered. There's a change that's happening right now. Like it's a catalyst. It's not just happening and getting changing. It's inclining. It's happening at a really rapid rate. Like data and memory card sticks have just it's exponential, and it's happened so quickly that now we're at a point where we're at a precipice where we're on the verge of 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 a exponential change in either human evolution, the bind between AI and human life and nano. Like we're getting off topic a little bit there, but that actually kind of can tie in because um, things are changing, but technology is changing at a fast rate, and we've got to be able to keep up with that because if not, there's going to be people left in the dust. And the thing
Right.
that bothers me the most is the things that we supposedly the whole world looks to us for music and movies and fucking art and a lot of those things. And I'm sure we get some cultural influences otherwhere, not to discount the rest of the world, but
Of course.
sorry, they suck. No, I'm just kidding. America, fuck yeah. Um, but they do for the most part look to us and they love American bands. And you've been in other countries, like they respect the fact that in the United States, we don't. Like you could go, this as a musician, you could go and pack some serious rooms across these just because you're a touring band and you're good. As long as you're good in a touring band,
Well,
people, you can get pretty decent spots for the most part. I've seen some really shitty bands do amazing things with just word of mouth and talking to people, networking, you know what I'm saying, over
Well,
there
I think
versus here where you fucking spend money and play, Fear Factory plays for 400 people at it. What the fuck?
well, the thing is it really comes down, and this again, you can bring everything back to economics.
Yeah.
And there's two things that come to mind when you say this. Price reflects reality, and supply and demand. When we go to Japan, okay, this tour with Revocation, Cattle Decapitation, okay, Revocation hadn't been to Japan in 10 years, okay, so they tour the world, but going to Japan is a special thing. So there's people that came out and couldn't believe they were there again. They hadn't been there in a decade. So the fact that a lot of people don't tour to Japan, the supply and demand, versus Massachusetts, where if you like a band, they're coming through. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just, you see
it's
what
gonna
I'm saying?
happen
You're like, oh, I'll just
inevitably,
catch them next time. You know, in
right?
Japan, it's like, let's go because
Because you
we don't
get
know the next
one
time.
chance to see him. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I
And
didn't necessarily mean Japan. I meant more so the other
well,
countries,
but
but
but that I'm just giving you an
yeah,
example
no,
of
you're right.
supply and demand. You said because here all the stimuli we have so many different things that are at our
Going all the time.
availability. I mean, we have so much we can, and it's funny because we talk about like playing shows in cities that aren't well attended, but then you play a show in the middle of nowhere and the place is packed wall to wall. And you
Yep.
say, how does this make sense? Well, in a city, you're competing with so much.
That's
There's
true.
so much available to draw your attention. And then when you go out to the suburbs and then you go to the very rural areas, people come out to these crazy little places and have amazing times. I mean, I can think of tons of places and times that this has happened.
That's
You
awesome.
know? And so that's supply and demand. That's
Yeah.
really why people. When you don't go to a place very often, they really appreciate it. But when you're there all the time, it's.
Yeah. It becomes what's the word?
Saturated.
Saturated.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that that's exactly a perfect example of our music scene right now, before the pandemic, right? Is that you could have some really good shows and stuff, but you're right. In a lot of circumstances, it's not the same dynamic because a lot of bands are going to be coming through frequently, because
Right.
of the location and the placement. When you're near a
Right.
major city, and then there's the areas around it, especially the Palladium and stuff like that, um, especially for metal.
Right.
um, I think that there is a certain calling for music in those areas that don't have, like you were saying, though, like rural areas in even New England, Maine, and you've seen it, New Hampshire. You go out to these places in the middle of nowhere and a bunch of people come out of the woods
Yeah.
because they're
It's
like, I
true.
haven't seen a fucking show in a hot minute.
It's true. Yeah.
I love those
Absolutely.
shows. Those are some of the best shows, those
They
intimate,
are.
like good experiences where everything's just on. You can hear yourself well. You've had time to, nobody's in a hurry. Nobody's
Yeah.
rushing to backline. People are just having a good time, having drinks, like a house party show and stuff like that. Those are really great shows. I've definitely played a lot of shows, but locally, I've not done a lot of touring. And that's something I kind of, I guess, regret in some ways, because Unrest, we really wanted to do stuff like that. And Matt really wanted to, and it sucks. Like we got to do a lot of everything that we wanted to do musically for the most part. Like he got to do, and he was pretty happy about. Other than the
Yeah.
touring thing,
Miss him, man. He was
man,
a
me
great,
too.
great dude.
Every
So
day, it's
I won't, I
really.
won't, I will not forget him. He was a great guy.
I think it's amazing the impact he left. And that when I met him, when I met Matt Fogg, I was in a band called Endless Nameless, and we were uh like a five-piece band. We needed a drummer, and it was kind of like an alternative rock kind of thing. And he was like, he's a guitarist, but he jumped in and played drums. And I met him
Right.
out of nowhere through a friend named Ronnie. And then we kept playing music together off and on with projects, and then we formed Unrest in Transit, and
Right.
that was the ride for him. And he was all about, he didn't care, ticket guarantees, whatever he was going to do, he was going to do everything he could to try to get us on shows. And he talked to a lot of people, knew a lot of people.
Yeah.
Kid could just, he's such a happy guy. Like
Well,
I never
everybody
ever
liked
liked him.
him. Everybody
He's
liked him. I mean, what there was nothing to not like about him. You know what I mean?
yeah, he's just big fucking ball of positive energy all the goddamn time. Even when he was in a bad mood and things sucked, like we had some really shitty times and
Of
like
course.
just awful moments. And he just managed to keep that positivity. So it was tough. Like after losing him, and then my wife shortly after, like I was really just fucking rocked by it, you know?
Yeah,
And
I bet, dude.
I don't know. There's something about the positivity that he always had throughout really negative moments that helped kind of at least edge me through it. You know what I mean? So I didn't just
Yeah.
collapse in on myself. You know what I mean? Because I had to keep things moving and so on and
Right.
so forth. But for the most part, I think that type of energy and positivity and happiness is really just passed on to the music community, right? Like whether you believe in energy or whatever, he loved music, and I think that he loved the music community, especially in New England.
Of course.
But I think that that's that type of energy is like you go where into what you love. I don't believe that there's necessarily, I'm not super religious, but I believe that, maybe energy just transfers. That's all. Like it's just a
Yeah, of
transference of energy, and that's it.
course.
It just goes back to the source of where it came. Energy is not created nor destroyed, so it's got to go
Yeah.
somewhere, right?
It's like the ocean, the waves, the water's actually not moving. It's just transferring the energy through it.
Right. That's
The
true.
water's moving, but it's not moving. It's just transfer that energy.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
waves, and that
Yeah.
fucking wild. Like, I think that far too often, like you know we overlook stuff like that,
Of course.
big
I
time.
think in life a ton of things get overlooked.
Yeah,
I
the
think I think
moments.
half of our problem in a lot of things is overlooking things. You
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Rushing through, um, everything to get to the next moment instead of trying to be in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, it's and I'm guilty of it for sure. But and I've said
Yeah.
this probably a ton of time. Listeners have probably heard this enough, but there's a quote that I like. It was in Stephen King's Insomnia. Each thing I do, I rush through so I can do something else, or and such the days do pass. I think it is. It's
Right.
something along those lines. Almost on about 90%. But
Yeah.
that's it hits me in the way that like why rush through your life to get through the next point to the next point to the next point, and then before you know it, you're fucking dead. You
Yeah,
know?
it's one of the great conundrums, man.
Yeah.
It is, it's one of the great conundrums. It kind of brings me back to when we were talking about when I was talking about income and age. Well, as you get older, or or even just as you're growing in general, you are always striving for something, and that's purpose. And
Right.
part of not having equality, that's a good thing about it. There's a lot of good that comes from inequality because it gives you something to strive for. You start down low and you've got hope. If you're on a level playing field, there's really nowhere to go.
Right.
And
Right.
I'll tell you one thing right now: the highest suicide rate is men in their 50s and 60s. I don't know if you know that,
Oh no, that makes a lot of sense for sure.
because they start to lose purpose. And if you ever
Hmm.
noticed guys, they have a hard time retiring.
Oh yeah.
when you
Oh yeah.
go when you go to and we could go to minimum wage at some point. When you go to like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a big box store, you see a lot of older guys working there
Yeah,
because they need
absolutely.
something to do.
Because they can't they got to keep working. Like
You got
I've
to do
never
something. Yes.
this right now in my life has been kind of the most like I was in a appliance back when we were in rest in transit, back before my ankles got significantly worse. I was in the appliance industry for like 10 years. The last job that I had, I was selling appliances in a major retailer. I won't go too much into the details, but basically
Right.
I things got worse. I'm not selling appliances anymore. But in between that, I was, field sales manager for Samsung and all that. Um, when it got to the point, basically they let me go. their view is that, you know, my tardiness sucked, which it was true. I mean,
Yeah.
I was going through all kinds of fucking shit. My wife was dying, and my ankles started to go to shit, and they told me to take out FMLA paperwork, put the FMLA paperwork in, you know, and then as soon as I put it in the next day, they let me go. So it was like, you know, basically it's bullshit. I'm not going to go into what, you know, the whole fucking legal thing, but long story short, I knew that, you know, especially after Kayla died, that there's no way in hell one I can ever get a job. The appliance career, and this is another example of automation. Appliances jobs are going away. The job I had was like the only job in New Hampshire that you'd get. Barron's, major brands, or fucking independent retailer, somebody like that. Which, you know, I have my gripe with Barron's, but they're a good company. The reason why is because they service their shit. They work on all of their stuff. They install all of their stuff. So, you know, I made my gripe with how we exited, but I still send somebody to go buy something from them because I know they'll actually get a good service, and that's why I work there, right?
Right.
So the thing is jobs like that, appliance retailers, appliance repair is never going away. Like you said, there's some things that aren't going to be replaced by AI. That's one thing that'd be very hard to replace with AI is appliance repair. But more importantly, appliance sales can be very easily replaced by AI, except for custom appliance stuff like Sub-Zeros and that shit. And there's a lot of mistakes that are going to happen without a specialist in an appliance, but it doesn't matter. The industry is changing, and that job's gone. It's gone. It's going to be gone in the next 5 years for sure. Other than these mom and pops across the country, which will fight the robots basically.
Right.
And they may win. Who knows? But I know that the Lowe's and the Home Depots and all that shit, when I was their rep, I was their rep, for the listeners that don't know this out there. I'd go to the different stores and, um, you know, report back, you know, Best Buy, Lowe's, Home Depot. And as they were going, I go into these stores, and I won't say which ones, but the, in the orange home improvement company, uh you go into that shithole and fucking, I'll disparage them all day. They suck, man. I fucking have had a terrible experience as a customer, terrible experience as a rep. Like I go in there and they would always be new people in the appliance department, and they'd move people over to the paint department. They just cycle them, and it's like, where's so and so? Oh, they're over in paint. Well, what the fuck no, dude. Appliance people need to be selling appliances. You can't be moving people around. It's a specialty thing, you know.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, I am not in that position anymore. There's no way to go back into that, especially where I can't stand for longer than like 30 minutes without, you know, using the cane and the Canadian crutches. I'm supposed to use both, but I'm unable to, I guess, accept some of my limitations still. I'm struggling with that a lot.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, long story short, there's not there's not jobs for me out there in that position. And now, of course, I mean, with a kid, like there's no way to balance this. I'm having a hard time being a father, doing everything there, and then just managing this
Right.
stupid little podcast. Like at this
Right.
point, like I'm putting all my energy into that, and then music. You know, but we're only really like practicing once a week, and you know, to be fair, they've been doing all the work on the recording side of the, you know, DIY, the editing, mastering, and all that stuff. I've really done shit there except for showing up and
Right.
made tracks, and then show up for
Okay.
practice. So,
Well, that's
you know,
good.
drop.
Doing something.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to keep busy because, like you were saying, and this goes back to where you were going, and I didn't mean to go on a big tangent there, but that's what we do here at Abstract Transmissions. Is older guys and people in positions like, you know, in their 50s or whatever, they're retiring, but similar circumstance for me. Like if I, you know, was just here all day, not doing anything, playing fucking, I don't know, video games, like I'd go out of my fucking mind.
You can only
Granted, I
do that
can't.
so much, man.
Yeah,
You can only do so much of that.
I think it could drive anybody crazy. And that's why my theory, that the theory that if you just give people $1,000 a month, they're just going to sit around and be lazy, is just not realistic, especially with men.
Well,
Nobody wants
yeah,
to sit down
yeah.
and
I
collect
mean,
money.
yeah. Well,
We get
$1,000
antsy.
enough. Yeah, $1,000 isn't enough to really
Right.
even
It's
get
right the
by.
poverty line.
Yeah, but what I like about it is an aspect that most people aren't talking about. Was he was talking about abolishing welfare, abolishing the
Mm-hmm.
administrations,
Getting rid of all that paperwork, all that bureaucracy
yeah, and
bullshit.
all that waste and
Mm-hmm.
theft. There's theft involved too. But you,
Absolutely.
I do like
Disability
that
too.
theory because you know what it does is it actually puts responsibility back on each individual,
Yeah.
but it helps them. And you can then say, well, hey, listen, if everybody's getting it, you're now on a level playing field, so no more excuses.
Yep.
You know what I
That's
mean?
exactly right. I
So
fucking love that perspective, man.
yeah, and they would revet disability though too, which is another thing.
Yep.
They'd revet. He wants to revet it and go
And they should.
Get it really stringent, which makes sense because you got to find a way to pay for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Well, and I don't not like to say that, like, I'm disabled. Like, I don't want to say that to people who are disabled, like, oh, you should be, put under a microscope. But what I do think is that a lot of people are going under disability because there's no other option. And not so much that they're disabled, but the crushing pressure of the economic fuck storm that exists right now, the boot, so to speak, is causing people to be so depressed that they're killing themselves, which is making them disabled and pain.
the last figure I saw was suicide is 12 times higher right now than it typically is.
Yeah, but a lot of that is actually from 9 to 14-year-olds killing themselves right now. And
I haven't looked at the demographics.
It's really bad, dude.
No,
you're right. What you just said is exactly spot on, actually, like, to the point. And the reason why that number spikes so much is it's fucking sad. It scares the shit out of me. I have a 9-year-old, so it's fucking horrific to even think about. But 9 to 14-year-old kids right now are killing themselves like triple the amount that they were to 6 months ago, and at that point it was triple the amount to last year. And it's really bad.
I'm sure social media is a big part of that.
Yeah, but also video games and electronics, and their face constantly, and then they lose and they break their TV accidentally, and then they fucking do something rash, like kill themselves. There was a kid that did exactly that. He fucking smashed his monitor and fucking panicked because it was a brand new monitor, and he fucking,
That's
a monitor, right? Like,
yeah,
that just fucks with you, man.
absolutely.
It's so fucked because it's something so insignificant, and the dad, was ruined by it because he was like, it was a thing.
Buy a new monitor.
Fuck the monitor. Buy 100 monitors. Fuck those monitors.
Right.
Yeah, and that because I see it with my own kid, right? I see how much he's on the electronics and how fucking kids are when you take it away from them, and like, if you don't give them kind of notice where they got to stop using it immediately, they turn, like, they lose their minds. Like, it's a drug, and I actually think that there's withdrawal effects and all that stuff. I mean, there's solid studies out there to actually support.
Of course, I've seen it. Yeah.
I haven't really dug into it a whole lot, to be honest with you. Just experienced it from being a parent, and it's fucking shitty because I'm trying to limit it to 2 hours a day, and it turns into like 4 hours a day, and then sometimes longer. And it's just like, fuck, man. But we're trying to get down a schedule, fun.
Right.
What really, really interests me, with the whole economic thing that you're talking about, from the perspective of like eliminating bureaucracy and getting rid of a lot of that waste and bloated.
Yes.
It also opens up a lot of avenues for people to get help, like women in troubled situations, that or anybody in a troubled, abusive situation that needs to leave and financially is like pinned down by the other person.
Yeah,
having $12,000
I mean,
a year
there's a ton of benefits. I mean, I liked his theory on, if you had a little bit of a cushion, a little bit more comfort, you could take more chances, and you could be more courageous, and you might be more likely to start a business or be an artist or do something of,
Start a bakery, yeah.
And so I definitely like the theory of it. But again, the
Trade-off.
detractors of anything will say, you have to say, well, but there's this. Well, but there's always
it's
a
going to
trade-off.
cost a lot of fucking money.
There's always there's a trade-off for everything. And I'm not, necessarily a big proponent for Yang's idea, but I do like the idea of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it in a test for a little bit. Or it was committed,
Oh, I think that it would almost, especially now the pandemic has shown how much we as a society, how close to the edge we were and where we are.
But see, that's the thing, and that's what I was trying to kind of illuminate earlier in the conversation was where poverty is the norm and wealth is the exception. And that's the lens. And remember I said, what lens do you view things? That's the objective, fact-based lens.
That's true, for sure. But we're supposedly the richest country in the world, and all of our data is collected in exponential amounts. We see shit for that. Not to mention,
yes. But we're just on a better level of the same situation that exists around the world.
Oh, right.
So
no, you're right.
Like if you make $34,000 a year, you're in the 1% of the world.
Yeah.
But to be in the 1% of America, you got to make over $250,000 a year. So
now the whole world's getting flooded with electronic devices and access to the internet, which is going to change things exponentially in smaller countries. Starlink or whatever it is that Elon Musk is.
But free internet. So there's always the debate of what type of system should we be living in, but the free market economy, it's definitely not perfect, but it's by far the best.
I actually would argue that it is perfect and that we've never actually tried it. That we don't have a free market. Right now we have crony capitalism, right? Amazon's getting an advantage. Dairy companies are getting an advantage from the government. We shouldn't have government intervention at all. Government shouldn't intervene with business.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that, because I don't know if you know who Adam Smith is, but Adam Smith is the father of free market economy. Okay, free market economics. And he, in the year 1776, the same year this nation got its official freedom, became its own nation, he published the Wealth of Nations, and it was basically a framework based on Scottish economics, which he was developing, but he's from England.
Yeah.
Basically, of how to set up a framework of the greatest system that we could possibly have. In his book, he cited a bunch of things that said, this is what I'm wary of. He says, I'm not worried about people being bad to each other as much as I'm worried about the government having its hand in too much.
Yeah.
He's concerned about some companies becoming more successful, which is going to happen, and then them going and swaying the government officials to give them benefits. And that's exactly
what's happened.
That's crony capitalism. And that was his concern.
And that's exactly what's happened. And
exactly.
That's where, when you're saying economic inequality, that's where, like, you're right. Inequality is going to happen. Inevitably, it's going to happen.
No matter what.
But this type of a rampant disparagement, and that's not natural. That's caused by the government interfering and giving them an extra edge. They screw other people at a lower tax bracket. That's fucked. That's
it's not opposite. You can't say that in a blanket statement, because there's a lot of factors that go into it beyond government. Government is helping, but you have to remember, how do the biggest companies get their money?
Profit?
How do they get their money? How does Amazon get their money?
It depends. I mean, you got to look at it.
No, it doesn't depend. It's very simple.
Oh, it does. Dairy companies get subsidies. They get subsidies more than they make.
I understand that.
90%, I think.
How does Amazon get their money?
Amazon gets their money from innovation, and they get their money from ideas, and they get their money from.
They get their money from people. Providing. They get their money one way. They get their money from providing the wants and needs of the most amount of people.
I absolutely just like every other provide company. A service.
It used to be Bill Gates. Now it's Amazon.
Yeah, but there's a difference. And the difference is the government's interfering.
There's no difference.
They gave them an edge. They let them do whatever the fuck they wanted.
There is no
crushed
difference.
Other companies.
Listen. Let's go back to basics here. There is no difference. A company, first of all.
No. Hold on. I'm going to disagree. Just let me finish my thought for a second. You can have the wheel. Walmart is a good example of economy that naturally happens. They went in, they were bigger, they crushed everybody, right? In my opinion, I think that unfortunately was just fair for Walmart. I don't think that it was unfair.
It's the same exact thing.
I don't think it's the exact same thing. I think Walmart is completely different.
There's
model,
no difference.
And Amazon has had about 200% more tax breaks than, because you got to understand the growth of Walmart. How can you say that's not true? The growth of Walmart,
let me explain it to you.
As soon as I finish, you can absolutely have the wheel. All I'm saying is that Walmart had the advantage of Bush's tax advantages to Walmart weren't that great. And they didn't have the advantage of AI, and they didn't have the support of really the US government a whole lot. I mean, they supported them by saying, yeah, you could have a shitty, low wage, and then people can pay for fucking welfare, and the government will eat that. But what they didn't have is they didn't have them saying, I'll squish the competition for you so you can fucking get up. And that's exactly what they did with Amazon.
Okay, so
50%. But and just 5 more seconds and it's yours. The difference with Walmart is that Walmart came in and they just crushed people because they could do it, and small businesses failed. They couldn't stand up to Walmart, and that's just the Goliath, and it crushed David. And that's natural economy, and I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, it sounds awful, but I'm okay with that. Amazon's a different animal.
Well, first of all, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. But tax brackets are tax brackets. There's no tax code anywhere that says we're going to benefit a particular company.
Amazon paid no taxes.
No. Listen, there's no tax code that says we're going to do this for Walmart, but we're going to do this for Amazon. That doesn't exist.
No, I know. Not now.
So it never has and it never will.
No, I'm not saying that Walmart has an advantage now, dude. I'm saying that the difference between when Walmart blew up in the 90s versus when Amazon blew up now. Not comparing them to each other now.
But what I'm trying to tell you is this. They're the same exact thing. Every process was exactly the same. Walmart started.
No way.
Yes, listen. Okay. Walmart started, and they became the best way for people to get goods. Okay? By far. They became the best way to get goods. They got their money by people voluntarily going into their store and purchasing their products. I do it all the time. Okay? Now I spend money with Walmart and Amazon. Okay? Amazon, first of all, the small guy doesn't get to do crony capitalism. You and I don't get to do crony capitalism.
I get that.
We would have to build our company to a certain point where we had enough capital and value and strength to go to a government, to go to a government official to pay them. Okay. And we don't have that. So what that means is the company has to grow to a certain extent completely on its own in a free market, or whatever we call a market here. It's partially free, okay? To get to a point to even participate in crony capitalism. That's one thing. So Amazon gets their money by people spending their money. I'm guilty of it. I buy stuff from them because they're providing for me. Same thing with Walmart. And then if you want to talk about the taxes, the way that this is the thing that frustrates me the most. People don't understand how taxes work. Okay. Every single year, 2/3 of the tax burden is placed on big companies. Okay, so 6% of the businesses in America pay 2/3 of the tax bill. Okay, even if they pay a small percentage, still paying a large amount.
Right, and used to though. That's not how it is.
No. But even if they do, there's 5 facets to this, and I'm going to tell you what they are. And I'll tell you exactly how this works, so you can really put this in a perspective. Because I didn't know this until a couple years.
I mean, explain it, but I already know where you're going with this.
Do you know? Let me ask you this: do you know why big companies get bailouts by the government when things are going poorly?
Do
you know why?
Do I know why I think, or why you think? Because it may be a different thing.
Let me give you an example. This year's a pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a pandemic. Carnival Cruise Line got an exorbitant bailout.
Fuck them, let them sink.
Do you remember that? Okay. Do you understand why they get
let them sink?
Okay. Do you know why they get the bailout?
Because government's fucking stupid and shouldn't be paying them. They don't deserve
because the government decides based on taxpayer votes and taxpayer money that it's best to keep the big business afloat to keep all the employment. And
But
that's
it's
why they
not really
do it.
taxpayer. It's taxpayer.
No,
It's lobbyist money. It's not
well,
taxpayer money. We
no.
don't make any.
You're
We
missing the
don't make
point.
any decisions.
You're
We
missing the
we get
you're
no
missing the
choice.
point. You're missing the point. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about employment. If the company goes under, the amount of unemployment that results is astronomical. So the big automakers, the big box stores, the cruise lines, the airlines, companies that employ an astronomical amount of people. If those businesses go under, the amount of time it's going to take to replace them puts all the employees in a bad situation. That's why they do the bailouts. So do I agree with it? I'm split on it because I think the company should be organized better. But at the same time, I understand the theory behind saving people's jobs.
I understand the theory behind it, but it's let them fail. Those big companies, let them fail.
Right, but
bail
by
out the small companies.
Fail, what I'm trying to tell you is by letting them fail, you let a lot of people fail.
You don't, because the companies
You
aren't
do.
actually failing, and
You
you
do.
and
What
I
about?
both know those companies aren't going anywhere. They're
That's
gonna
not. I'm
eat
not
it.
talking about. Okay, you're missing the point, brother. You're not getting it.
I
The people, the employees, not the company. The
I know,
employees.
because
Forget
the
the
company
company.
chooses to fire the employees.
No.
It's
If they go
profit over
under,
people, or people
no.
over profit.
If they go under, they can't employ people, and you have an
Of
astronomical
course,
amount of people, a very
they're
large
not going to
function.
go under regardless. We both know that.
Listen, if they go under, I'm not saying if they're
Not
gonna.
possible is what I'm saying.
If they mismanage their company, companies go under all the time. So
Yeah, but no, not JetBlue, not Pan Am.
Companies.
My mom worked for Pan Am, right? And I watched that company. They didn't go under. They never went under. They turned into a railway company, and
There's a ton, right, but there's a ton that do go under. So you're saying every business that ever exists doesn't
not
go
big
under?
companies. Most big companies
Yes,
get
do.
sold out. The money
They
gets
do it all the
shifted.
time.
It's just money getting put into other people's hands, and other people.
No,
nobody ever really loses money, dude. It's all fucking social
that's not
bullshit.
true. That's not true. People lose money all the time.
People making, several $100 million a year, the lower ranking people, but the people way up there at the top, the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, the fuck they do, man. They roll it over, they find a place to hide it, and they get out of it. So I just don't agree with you, man. But we can agree to disagree on that. I don't think that's super relative to the point where you're saying, and I do.
Well, it is though. I mean, people say companies are in for profit. No, that's not true. Companies have profit and loss.
Why shouldn't they be in?
No, listen, you're not. You got to let me get my point across.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Companies, because you've been interrupting me a lot. So the companies are only susceptible to profits. They're susceptible to profit and loss. To think anything otherwise is silly. I run a business myself, and I take losses. This year, I've taken almost $15,000 in losses. It sucks. Okay. I've still made a good amount of money, but I've taken losses because that's business. Companies go under. Happens all the time. It can happen for a variety of reasons. Look at products that were popular just 20 years ago are useless today. Those companies, if they don't adapt and evolve, they go under. So there's a lot of companies, right? There's a lot of companies. I mean, Guitar Center is doing a Chapter 13 right now. They're not going to go under. They're restructuring their debt. They're moving this here. They're moving that there.
That's what
they're
doing this did too.
What's that?
That's what Daddy's did too, right before that.
Yeah, but that's just unfortunately that's the name of the game. Yeah. But what I'm trying to explain is that you got Amazon. Do you know Amazon is the world's largest employer? Do you know that they're the world's number 1 producer of revenue, of providing revenue?
Did you know that I don't like Amazon, man? I do.
Well, okay, but let me just tell you the reasons why they're beneficial. Okay, so you can understand from an economic standpoint. They employ more people than any company that's ever existed. They raise more tax dollars than any company that's ever existed. They're driving down prices for every single person, whether you shop there or work there or not. They're still helping through the market drive prices down. Okay. There's all these aspects that big companies that you have to look at the good because there is good.
I definitely agree with you.
It's just that they've become more successful and we're taught to hate big companies. Now, if they do something the right way, what's wrong with that? Now, if they do something the wrong way, there is something wrong with that. But it's hard to tell who's done what because we don't know the inner workings. And also, another thing, as far as the tax dollars go, you look back at the 70s. I mean, they used to have a 91% nominal tax rate up until 74. Okay. And if you made over $250,000 a year in your business, you had to pay a huge tax rate. Well, you know what happened? Hi, China. How are you? We're going to come do
Came
business
in and
with you.
decimated shit.
So
Absolutely.
two things happened. It was the biggest boom in crony capitalism, or you went to China. Do you know what that did for the American economy? It killed the American economy.
It went to China.
Yeah, it all went to China, and it's still.
Oh, you don't have to tell me, man. I worked for
Mo-
fucking Samsung, and not to say that's China, but it's the same idea. We took TVs that were worth material value. Like an old TV has fucking material. You can take it apart and get shit out of it and make money off of an old TV, right? Just in the
right,
actual like golden pieces and all that shit. Now you get the thing that costs fucking 400% the cost of the old one, and it's we just sold all of they just sold our fat asses back to us like in Fight Club. You know what I mean? Like we got these shitty cheap TVs that look really nice, but they're made really inexpensive to last fucking small amount of time versus
right.
the thing that we used to have that was made out of something really strong.
True.
And I mean they're innovative, and they had the advantage. They're very, very creative, and I give it to like Korea and some of the Japanese companies and whatnot. But we were talking about China, and I mean they're even more at an advantage there because of the mistakes that they made, and mistakes people like Biden made. Like I agree, man. I'm not saying that we didn't fuck up economically with China big time, and I actually think that you think that I disagree with you more than I do. I always try to argue both sides of the perspective, but my big perspective here, and I do think that Amazon had an advantage that Walmart didn't have. I mean,
What was the advantage?
the advantage that Amazon had that they didn't have was that the United States government stepped in and said this during their time, taxes were basically zero for everyone on profit. So any profit they made, no taxes on the profit. And that's going for Walmart too. Walmart had that same advantage. So I wasn't arguing that Walmart didn't at that time, but that's not when Walmart was up and coming. Walmart's already done their damage on society. You're right. They're the dinosaur. Amazon ate their lunch. And Amazon now is continuously eating their lunch, and Sears and every other brick and mortar store from here to fucking Paducah. But
What happened to Sears?
Sears? I'll tell you what
They
happened
don't
to
exist
Sears.
anymore,
Eddie
right?
Lampert
I,
happened to
it's a
fucking Sears.
rhetorical. I know what happened to Sears. I know all about what happened to Sears.
I worked for the company. Yeah,
It's a rhetorical
they were
question.
real bad. Mismanagement, like you said.
So and they went under. They're done.
Absolutely.
They got beat out.
Yeah, they got not even just beat out. They got fucking strung along by a cocaine addict and then beat out. And then who suffered during that? The people that I know that worked there for 30 years got fucked out of their pensions.
Yeah, I heard about it. It's terrible. That's really sad.
Companies, they do whatever they want, and they have the freedom to do so because of legislation, because of crony capitalism. So it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, so let me ask you this.
I don't believe. Well, before I'll let you go, because I do talk over you, and I apologize. The thing that I'm saying is that crony capitalism, free market capitalism, can exist completely without government intervention.
Yes, that's the way it should be.
At all, and I think that we can still not have crony capitalism. I think crony capitalism happens because government intervenes. If you basically you take something like insulin, just an example. This isn't how it works, but so you've got 4 companies that make insulin. Government controls all 4 of them.
Yes,
so you guys can't make it so high. But then if you were to just let go of that, you'd have 60 different companies, and they would decimate the value, so nobody would be able to charge over $1.
Dude, you'd be paying $5 for 2 weeks supply of insulin.
Maybe $1, dude.
Or whatever. I'm just throwing a number out there. But the problem, yes. So
government fucks that up.
So let me ask you this. So the funny thing is, how did the American people in general be conditioned to hate the big company based on something that the government did?
Right.
Okay. So you can't have.
I don't hate Amazon. I don't want you to get me wrong there, dude. I think Amazon has done everything they're right.
Right. I'm just saying in general, people are conditioned to hate a big company making a lot of money when it's like, well, hold on. Do we not put any fault at the government's feet? We don't. most people don't put any fault at the government's feet. It's like, hold on a second. It takes two to tango.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with occupational licensing, but I've done a lot of research on occupational licensing. And there's a bunch of different scenarios where a big company will go to a bureaucrat and say, hey, we need to push competition out. How can we do this? Government official says, pay me X amount of dollars, and I'll pass a bill under the guise of safety or something. And, you know, and then it cost almost $1 million for someone to start a taxi in New York.
Yeah.
Because a big company has pushed a way to get a government official to write a law.
Right.
I mean, to get a medallion is $700,000 or more dollars to be able to have a one-man, one taxi operation. And that's criminal. And a lot of times companies go to government officials and they get occupational licensing to knock down their competition. I mean, I question a lot of stuff that's happened this year in 2020 with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the big box stores get to stay open and the little guys don't? I mean, that bullshit. Is funneling money to the very top without letting other people compete.
Fuck the box stores. It's funneling money to Amazon only, basically.
Well, no, yeah, but not really, though, because the box stores have been one of the only stores that have been able to stay open.
That's true, yeah. There's only a few of them, and some people can't afford Amazon Prime, and you're right. You know, I mean, I have Prime, dude, and I have no quarrel with what Amazon's doing. I just think the government should stay out of it. They would have never made as much money as they did in profit if the government just, you know.
The biggest problem with healthcare is government intervention, because if you put it this way, don't you think somebody would love to be the person that cures all cancers?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. You can't tell me that there's not selfish scientists and doctors out there working on ways to cure cancer, right?
Yeah.
But there's limitations.
Or money. Yeah.
Whatever, fame or money, whatever. But regardless, somebody would love to be the hero. I mean, there's heroes. There's heroes who invented the light bulb and who invented who you could go on, electricity, all these different things. But there's so much regulation. You know, the FDA kills more people than it helps, and people don't want to talk about it. You know, the FDA will put such a stringent hold on putting something out to help people, and the amount of people that die waiting for it are never factored in. They want to make sure that they don't approve something that hurts people, which is totally
sued, basically.
Well, but that's understandable. But sometimes here's the trade-off. How many people die waiting for something that could have passed 5 years ago? You see what I'm saying?
I do. I think that there's a lot of money there in legislation and all that stuff shifting around. Like you said, the government is too involved in that stuff and they need to be out of it.
Yes.
I do agree with private healthcare, and at the same time, I do think that there's a way that they could make, because we're such a bloated, infinitesimal, weird thing now as a country, like people get in these arguments about capitalism versus socialism, and it's like, dude, we're so beyond that now. Like, we're in this new form of free market capitalist thing, because it's not really free market capitalism because government's there, but it's as close as we've gotten to free market capitalism ever.
Well, no, we maybe a long time ago we started out as a free market capitalist country.
Silk Road.
It's been chipped away. We're not closer now. We were closer 250 years ago.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because we're getting further and further away from, and the innovation has happened because of it. I mean, all the innovation and growth has happened as a result of that.
I think we still maintain our capitalist, I mean, we got to make sure we don't shift into the authoritarian socialism, because that is dangerous. And I can see a lot of people like Bernie supporters and shit. And I was actually pro Bernie in a lot of ways, only because I think he's a genuine guy. I don't like his politics, but I like him as a person. And person.
But my beef with Bernie is when I remember watching the final debate with Biden and Bernie. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching the debate, and he keeps going at the conditioning of people of the billionaires are out to get you. The billionaires are out to get you. What that does is, and let me tell you why this is so bad, because the billionaires are going to exist whether we like it or not. Whether it's free market or crony capitalism, it's going to happen.
Or bourgeoisie. Yep. No, you're right.
What we need that, and again, this comes back to the lens of what lens do we view? Okay, if you keep telling people that they're victims of billionaires and they're taking advantage of you and they're doing this and that and they want you to be poor, that takes responsibility away from the individual, because you're telling them that they're a victim.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very backwards way of looking at things.
For sure.
And it's misdirecting you from the real problems. There's real problems, and we're misdirecting you over here.
Right.
Hate this guy. Hate this guy. You see what I'm saying?
I agree. No, you're right, because you can't control all that shit. You can only control what you do in your life and who you are as a person and how you treat others. You can't
Right.
control how other people look at you, treat you, act towards you, like you, hate you, any of it. That's all out of your, everything is out of your control as a human being, really. If you think about it, you're
Right.
in very little control as a human species on this planet.
Yeah.
You know, a plane could fall out of the sky and kaboom, you're done for, and you
Right.
have no way of knowing. It's just,
Well,
hard
you
to
know,
code for the day, you know.
there's a book. So Thomas Sowell is my favorite educator of all time. He's written over 6,000 publications and 56 books. And his shortest book is a pretty good one. It's called The Quest for Cosmic Justice.
Familiar with it.
And he goes on and talks about the realities of life that we either don't believe or don't know about, and how we have a propensity to want to believe things that make us feel good.
Yeah.
And
this ties into Ayn Rand's
this
objective realism kind of.
It is right down that alley. It's
Mhm.
absolutely right down that alley.
Sure.
That you know, and people want to believe good things happen because of good karma or whatever, or you know, the reality is things just happen, and that's life. And things happen good and bad. And sometimes we choose to say, well, if something bad happened, it must be because of something bad. Somebody did something bad. That's not true. Sometimes bad things just happen with no nefarious intention behind it whatsoever. And sometimes great things happen of no doing of a human being. It's just, you know,
circumstance.
It's just circumstances. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think
serendipity.
The quest for cosmic justice kind of highlights that and puts things in perspective. Now, the deeper I got into that wormhole, partially I appreciated it, and partially I was not happy with it, because I'm like, well, you know, when you really learn how objective and brutal this world is, the world is tragic, and that's it. We've learned that. I mean, you've learned that. I've learned that.
Yeah.
The world is tragic, and so I think the lens you view it with is very important for
that is
your own health.
We woke up in a country where we didn't have to worry about our heads getting cut off today. So
correct.
Bingo.
Correct. You know,
and,
Thomas Sowell says
my country for that reason.
So. Oh, of course, absolutely. I mean, people are dying to come to this country. But one thing that I loved, I heard from Thomas Sowell say, and Walter Williams said it too, the richest of the rich 100 years ago would give up everything they had to live like the poor do today.
Yeah, because they have a cell phone in their hands.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling to somebody 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, just to have a refrigerator.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Imagine being so rich, but you don't have a refrigerator.
Oh, forget that. Even the advanced version of the washing board, when they made the ones where you could spin yourself with the rotor till.
Yes, and it was much faster.
That was so much of an advancement from the traditional washboard.
Exactly.
I mean, so much ridiculous research in old appliances. Stupid, wasteful information.
So the guy that actually produced the air conditioner was in 1949. He owned a printing press in Philadelphia, and it was August and it was hot. He's trying to find a way to make a machine to pull the humidity out of the building. By doing so, he accidentally created the air conditioner, and all of a sudden the room was cooling down, and like, wow, this is amazing. And everyone was working happily, and wow, this feels great, you know?
Awesome.
4 years later, the first window unit came out. So if you lived before 1953, you had no clue what an air conditioner was.
Yeah.
You know
what I really love right now is that it's not me talking about appliances, because my listeners on here, we got, roughly now 600 to 700 ish continuous listeners, because we start with A and B. We got the advantage of starting at the beginning of the row, I guess. But they've heard me say appliance shit so many times. You're the first person that it's been an appliance story, not from me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I just
that was good. I love that story too, by the way.
I've been in the last couple of years, I've really gone down to listening to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to a lot of economists.
Here.
I listen to about 20 different economists. And the way that I ended up down this wormhole was I was actually listening to a Joe Rogan podcast about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered a guy named Peter Schiff. And I don't know if you know who he is, but Peter Schiff is a businessman. He's a very successful businessman. And he was the guy that said, I am the 1%, come talk to me.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
the
yeah.
guy that went to Wall Street and said, I am the 1%, let's talk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He held up a sign and he was talking to people and
I remember
talking
that.
about how he
Around
built
the
his
Occupy Wall Street time. Yeah.
yeah, and how he built his businesses and how business works, all these different things. And a lot of people who were very angry really didn't know much about anything.
Yeah.
And they were yelling at him and screaming at him and threatening him and all kinds of stuff. And it was crazy. But he brought to light some viewpoints I had never heard before. And so I went down a wormhole and I started listening to economists. And then I started listening to historical economists. And I started paying attention to past policy and the effects of it. I learned about minimum wage. I learned about rent control. I learned about the welfare state. I learned about all these different things and the way things were before and the way things were after. And then listen to economists explaining why things happened the way they did and kind of come to my conclusions.
So what do you think about voluntarism versus social programs? Like
what in what sense?
That we don't need a gun against our head to pay taxes, so to speak. It doesn't need to be taxes where they say you have to give us money, and if you don't, we're going to come down and hunt you, and ultimately you'll end up either in jail or worse. We need to eliminate that entirely because that.
Well, they do that. The IRS will put you in jail.
That's exactly right, that's theft. That's using,
and it's unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. And again, taxation without representation. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's just theft. And because even tax itself has been always looked at as that viewpoint. And I've heard a bunch of perspectives about how taxes since the 90s, the IRS specifically, the whole income tax thing is just a fucking racket because all of our local taxes pay for like gas and all of that stuff to pay
for
absolutely shit. The federal tax, it just goes to like black budget shit. Well, and now with the release of UFO stuff in the full whatever, the Freedom of Information Act that Obama did or whatever, now we know that it was true. All of those black budgets were bloated as fuck. Went to UFOs and all kinds of crazy shit. And you can even read it right online. It's bananas.
When I debate people on tax structures or minimum wage, people think I have this or unions. I mean, geez, man, unions are awful. And people think, well, minimum wage helps people and unions are good for workers and we need to pay taxes to have roads and this and that. And it's not that we don't need those things. We do in a sense. Okay. Right. But in life, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. Just like I said, the Bernie thing, focusing on the billionaires, they're out to get you. The reason you're poor is because they're rich and this and that. They're diverting you from reality. When we're focused on taxes, we need to make rich people pay more taxes. Why are we focused on that and not focused on, hold on, wait a minute. Why are we paying as much as we're paying? Why do they have to pay more? Why shouldn't we pay less? And that's my biggest point of contention is we go, if we're paying 25, 30%, why isn't the billionaire paying that? And they're making billions and we're not making billions. Totally valid argument. And anybody with a brain understands that theory. Go, oh yeah, well, obviously that makes sense.
Right. And then
it shouldn't be them paying more. It should be us paying less because people are diverted from the reality of the tax money is abused, stolen, perverted. Just it's bad. If you look at the way federally funded jobs go, it's like they have an open-ended check, a blank check. Just keep because it's taxpayer money that's already been paid in, so you don't have to please the customer.
Mazes of fucking Byzantine mess fucking bullshit. Yeah. And you're right. And that's why just clean slate. Like I completely agree. Get rid of all of it and then just fucking UBI or something basic there to take care of this. Just simple basic things that are easy, economically focused on making us be more responsible.
I just think
stop being dependent on everything.
When I talk about minimum wage, I don't know if you know the history of the minimum wage.
I
But
do. I am
the
very
history
familiar
of
with
the
that. And the
minimum wage is
labor
very, very
riots
dark.
and all that.
It's very, very bad.
Yeah, labor riots.
Well, but that was 1938. So 1931 was the Davis-Bacon Act. And the first minimum wage was in collusion with two places, Australia and South Africa. They both enacted some sort of minimum wages just prior to the United States. All three of them, and I'm going to tell you this right now, and I'm not going to mince my words when I say this, and I ask you and anybody to challenge me on this. I put this out into the ethos. If anybody wants to challenge me on this, challenge me. The minimum wage, particularly in the United States, South Africa, apartheid South Africa, and Australia, was never intended, and they were the first minimum wages to ever bring up a poverty floor. They were never, as a matter of fact, the Davis-Bacon Act. Okay, so Senators Davis and Bacon from Pennsylvania, New York, on March 31st, 1931. You can hear the congressional hearings or read them. You can look it online. You can see this stuff. They talk about bringing cheap colored labor up from the South to the North and undercutting federally funded construction jobs from white people.
Yeah.
The first minimum wage ever enacted in the United States was the Davis-Bacon Act, and it was a racist bill because the black community was doing so well in construction field that they were overtaking the white population and taking work away. And that was the free market in action. And let me tell you, the minimum wage helps, and this is indisputable for any economist. Find me an economist that comes with a different result than this. It helps big companies and it hurts poor people. And people go, how is this possible? This can't possibly be possible. Let me explain to you how it works. A long time ago, before minimum wage was really enacted, there was all kinds of jobs that you could pay a young kid, a tiny amount of money to do, whether it was an usher at a movie theater or someone to wipe your car down after a car wash, or various tiny little tasks that adults wouldn't be bothered with. And what that did was it brought people into the workforce at a young age and taught them responsibility and work ethic. You didn't have to work them 40 hours a week or risk their fingers getting cut off in a factory. It's just
like it used to be.
is just the introduction to the workforce. And what that did was it changed the whole landscape of the workforce in America, and it taught young people to work and how to advance themselves. Okay. Minimum wage, what that does is, and people don't understand this, every time a minimum wage goes up, big companies benefit from more than anybody because they have the backing and the power. They get a surplus of applicants, and when you get a surplus of applicants, the cost of information is reduced. So the company gets to say, hey, we have this giant pool of applicants. Now we get to be very picky, and we don't have to work as hard to hire somebody. So that benefits them there, okay? Then what it does is, because the job has to pay more because of a federal regulation, they now say, well, now your responsibility's up and we're going to hire a few less people. So they really just pass the buck. And what they've done is taken more applicants, but offered less jobs. And then, so what that does is it keeps more people out of the workforce, but it only keeps low skilled. And a lot of times it's minorities. And if most people don't know the history of minimum wage was never intended to help people. It was intended to hurt people. And most people don't know this.
It's funny you said that because Jesse Ventura brought that up probably like 2 or 3 years ago, and it just went, nobody noticed it. It just went under the blip. He's like, fuck minimum wage. What about maximum wage? You know what I mean? Like, what about companies putting in that? Now, I don't necessarily agree that they should, that's not my place to decide.
But a maximum wage makes more sense than a minimum wage.
Right. It makes a hell of a lot more sense. I'm like, I never looked at it that way, but
now, and this goes to another topic too, but rent control. People think, rent control is good because you can't jack up rents, right? You can only rent something for what someone can pay or willing to pay. And rent control has been repealed in almost everywhere it's been enacted. And why is that? Well, you look at all these broken down buildings around the country, that's rent control.
Yeah.
Because people that own buildings that rent them, they don't have an incentive to keep them. If their income is less than the cost of the building, there's no there's no reason to do business. And that actually hurts. Again, every one of these policies hurts the people it's intended to help, because what does it do? Now it makes housing get even more expensive.
Yeah.
And because supply and demand, you now have less available, so the price goes up.
It's a very libertarian perspective. I totally.
Well, but it is libertarian to view economics the way economics are.
Yeah, free
I
market
mean,
libertarianism.
well, but really, what it is it's not like a particular view. It's just here are the facts. These are the
I
facts.
agree.
You know what I mean?
I
These
like
are the
that.
facts.
I like
These are the.
that. I like that perspective, my friend.
Let me ask you this: the giant tax rates that ran up until the '70s, why don't they exist anymore?
well, I'm assuming it's because of Reagan. I
Well,
don't know.
no. Well, no, they don't exist. Reagan came in '81. They
Yeah.
don't exist. They stopped in '74. So that was
So Carter,
7 years before his presidency.
the peanut farm.
Why was rent control repealed?
Yeah, I have no
Because
idea.
because if something was good, if it was good enough, they would never repeal it.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
If you see what
No,
I'm
I
saying?
know. I've heard rent control, the perspective on rent control a bunch of times and how it impacts things negatively, but also because it controls the landlords and what their ability is to do. So if like the same thing we were discussing about with insulin there, you just take government out and what do you know? There's more landlords and there's more options and there's more
Yes.
people and more jobs.
Yes.
I agree.
So 180,000 people a year right now on average are moving out of California.
Oh God, I would never ever in a million years go to that
So
place.
they're going to
To
Arizona.
visit.
They're
No
going to
offense, guys.
Arizona.
Sorry. I know
What's that?
we've got like 100 listeners in California. I'm so sorry if I offended people, but sorry, your state fucking sucks.
Well, so what's happening? They're going to basically a few
Love you
different places.
guys.
They're going to Arizona and Texas. They're going to Boise, Idaho, and they're going to New Hampshire. Okay, and a lot of people. It's if you look at the trends, basically, they've impacted their state so negatively with overbearing policy that they can't afford to live there. A lot of people have said, "I cannot afford to live here. I need to go somewhere else." So they go to places that have a lot less regulation. Okay, where it's more affordable to live. And then they take those ideas that got them in trouble in the first place and they don't change and they create the same problem.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I've never really been a big fan of heavy social policy, and even like since I've had to be um, on programs, it's even worse because I see what you have to go through. You have to jump through hoops every 6 months. You have to go through all these things. It's really awful what they and the worst thing is the people who need it the most don't get it because they have major disconnects. They can't fill out the paperwork. They can't make the phone call. They can't there's
Right.
real people suffering out there that never get the help because
And if
of
they don't have a
fucked up
liaison,
programs.
yeah, if they don't have some sort of liaison helping
That's
them,
right.
it's not going to get done. I'll be completely honest with you.
It's so sad.
A lot of stuff I get done is because my girlfriend helps me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm so busy doing this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
She helps me do these little things here and there, and all those little things add up. She's like,
Absolutely.
"Oh, this medical bill comes in. I'll pay it and tell you how much it is." You know what I mean? Like different things, and it just helps me.
I feel that, man, for sure. It's one of those things that sometimes you don't recognize it until it's gone too.
Yeah,
There's a lot of other stuff there too. That you're like, holy shit.
she tells me every week this is what you have to pay me for bills. I pay it too. You know what I mean? And takes care of it and keeps my health insurance going and all my bill. You know what I mean? So it's all these little things, but and I'm an able-bodied person.
Yeah.
So
But it's
I can
good that
imagine.
it's good that you appreciate it though. You recognize it because it's good to be to be thankful of the things in the moment and stuff because like we were talking about earlier, people just blast through and then before you know it, life changes on the fucking
Of course.
dime, and it's
Absolutely.
like be in the moment where you can because you might not have it the next second. And
You could wake up tomorrow and something in your life could be wildly different out of nowhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've definitely personally made some solid mistakes in my life that you just can't take back and some things that you can just never flip or make right. You never apologize for. Like there's just so many things people take for granted. It's funny, I was laughing because of the I'm not a big Kevin Hart guy, but I just watched the Kevin Hart special just recently on Netflix. And as a dad and getting older, I could totally fucking relate to it. And I laughed my ass off through the whole thing. And it was funny, you pointed out the whole thing about how do you have an ass wiper? Do you have somebody that'll be there for you if you get fucking paralyzed and close to death? And, you know, somebody that's gonna, you know, be there to shave you. And like, if you were fucking, do you have that person, you know? And that's what
Oh,
love is like the real things that matter in life. Who's there by your side when all the shit is fucking wrong, you know?
right.
Those things, it's not the superficial shit on the outside that I think people most of the time look at, you know.
Right.
But I mean, of course,
Yeah.
that's a facet. You've got to be physically attracted to somebody. That's got to work, of course. But you've got to make the other things work, because fucking there's so many people that just stay, and that like codependent relationships and shit, and it's just
Right.
fucking bananas. And I just see all and it's so superficial, right? There's like this thin layer of fucking bullshit that you just wipes away if you just be honest, if you're just straightforward, if you're just who you are, and say, you know, you hold people accountable to their shit, and you hold yourself accountable to your own shit. It just makes a fucking world of difference. And I
Yeah.
think that there's so many, a lot of those things become exposed just getting older, I think. But
Yeah.
because you could just be you're just like, I just want to, I want normalcy in my life, you know. I want something consistent to uh you know. Anyway, I
Yeah.
think that you know, that's it's a big a fear for a lot of people, is that whole like loneliness kind of looming fucking thing, to the point where they jump into relationships and unhealthy ones.
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, I read a study, and it had a couple of pages of a preface before it got to the meat and potatoes of it. And basically, it's kind of long-winded. What does it take to be happy? And what is the meaning of life? And you know, all these different things. And it basically came down to, it was an anecdotal study. They took 1,000 people and they just asked them some questions, and they compiled the information into 3 columns basically. And they determined that the people that were happy and unhappy all had very distinct characteristics about their lives. Okay. And so they would ask everyone a handful of questions, and they'd find that the happiest people had 3 things in their life. And the 3 things are someone to love, something to hope for, and something to keep you busy. And the varying degrees of happiness was relative or correlative to the how many of these things they had checked off. So
Right.
people that were very unhappy in their life were lonely. They didn't really have anything to hope for, and they didn't really have anything that was keeping them going, keeping them busy. And the people that were happy had someone to love, and that had a very busy life, and always and had something to strive for. And it wasn't who had the most money or who was the best looking, or no, it was just having those 3 things. And 2 of them are purpose related, and one is companionship. So if you break it down simply, one is companionship and the other 2 are purpose. That's it.
That
Because
makes
your
a lot
life
of
has to
sense.
have purpose. So think about that. 2/3 of the scenario to be ultimately happy, or as happy as can be, I guess, depending on the situation, are purpose.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I I brought this up in an earlier podcast, but and I'm bringing it up again too, because you probably have seen this. But if not, I'll try to send it to you. There's a TED talk about um, addiction and how people have it wrong, and that's really belonging and meaning and purpose
Yeah.
that is the drivers of people being either addicted or not addicted. And the study in mice obviously is their proof, and I don't think that's 100%. You know, I think that that can be anecdotal in a lot of ways, but it does make a really valid point that the mice in the environments that had huge social circles and lots of mice sex and, you know, tunnels and happy mice lives, they didn't drink the cocaine water, they drank the regular water. They
Yeah.
didn't even choose to do it. And that most people
Well,
addiction to
yeah,
drugs and
and that
alcohol is despair illness. They don't keep themselves busy, and they're lost and they're not connected.
Well, so you're really hitting a nail on the head where that's really hits close to home with me because obviously you I don't know if you know I'm sober, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
13 years sober this year.
Hmm.
My life was a disaster before I got sober, and what I try to explain to people is the reason why I'm an alcoholic and an addict is because there's something wrong with me. Okay,
Yeah.
and the difference between myself, the way I try to explain it this way, the difference between myself and someone who could sit across the table from me that's not an alcoholic is you could put a case of beer in between us and we both start drinking. Okay. We're both human beings and it's the same case of beer. Okay.
Yeah.
The difference is I'm going to take it to an extreme and he may not, or, and the difference is what? What's the difference? There's two people and there's the same case of beer. What is the difference? The difference is that something is different in my brain from his.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing I learned when I first got sober a long time ago was I learned a ton of things going to AA. But one of the things that I learned was the substance is a symptom of the disease. And the difference between myself and somebody else is that I have the disease.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't have the disease, I could have a couple of beers here and there and not have an issue. But the problem is I have to drink myself to oblivion. I can't stop myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a defect in myself, and millions of other people have the same defect,
But
but
I
not
know
everybody
I know a
does.
lot of people, formerly, addicts and alcoholics, that their solution is to fill their lives with staying busy, and being,
Their trade
purpose. And
off. Their trade off.
right, right, right. Well, they're saying to themselves that they're,
Yeah.
able to have a healthy relationship, and and have a beer once in a while, and then not do it again after having a very excessive relationship. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of cases where, it's just, definitely, a disease, and it impacts people's lives horrifically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Absolutely does. Yeah.
I it's tough. I struggle with this a lot on the air, because um, my my wife is a very personal person. She didn't like to share anything about her life.
Right.
She's very anxious. But I feel like through her death, she would have wanted people to learn. I know for a fact, actually, that she would have wanted people to have learned from what she went through.
Yeah.
She was an alcoholic, and she
Yeah.
suffered from anxiety and depression and alcohol.
Right.
Cirrhosis is what took her life.
Yeah.
Um, you'd have never known it if you met her, ever. She
I didn't know that. Sorry to hear.
she would, no, it's okay. Actually, I don't bring it up ever. This is probably the first time I've actually been this, open about it on the podcast. But I feel like the benefit is really, it's the same thing that, you get at AA. My basis is um, recovering almost 2 years now. I may be wrong, and I feel bad if I'm
Okay.
off on it, but
Well, either
Doug's,
way,
yeah,
you're
doing
giving
great.
him you're giving him recognition.
He's an
That's good.
awesome, awesome guy, and I'm very proud of him. And I couldn't be more proud of him. And you know, I've seen a lot of those. I've seen what he's gone through and how it's impacted his life, and then I've seen just our lives, and how it's
Right.
impacted. And it's hard to bring up because I know that she hated the idea of talking about it. She shame, all of that stuff. But this is exactly
Right.
why you go to AA and you talk about it. Like, I've been to AA meetings myself and
Yep.
shared my own experiences with drugs and alcohol and whatnot. Like, I've had up and down tumultuous experiences here, there, and I mean, I try to be very open and introspective, to avoid falling into the pitfalls anything really heavy. But then again, I'm on tramadol, so it's tough because it's an opioid. But
Yeah.
I try to use that as an alternative to taking oxycodone
Right.
for the ankle issues, and then cannabis is what keeps me off of those heavier
Right.
medications. But it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, you can very easily go from pain medicating into just self-medicating because you don't want to get through life anymore, or because you lost somebody super important. And like
Right.
there's this whole experience of like losing somebody, you can see where that starts to become kind of topsy-turvy. Anyway, I went to a few AA meetings with both my bassist as support and my wife as support, and then shared some of my own personal experiences too. And the thing that I found was that the sharing thing, I think, is the most liberating thing for people, is the ability to talk in that connection. And
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah,
again, bringing that back, that connection is so important between people,
yeah.
because we're losing that. We're fighting, we're
That's
online,
absolutely.
we're not getting together, we're not doing what we're doing right now. You know what? We've got digital, we're using a computer, but we're still fucking being people, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we can have a
It's not.
vigorous conversation and still be fucking humans.
It's not much different than being in the same room right now, which is nice because we're not doing it through Facebook. We're
That's right. We're
actually,
not relying on the binary data.
yeah. And
Well, we are in a way,
one
but
thing I learned a long time ago in a saying that I learned when I got sober was talking about it cuts it in half.
yeah,
Meaning, you're going through something, you're stressed, you're anxious, whatever, you're having a hard time. Talking about it cuts it in half.
for sure.
And I love that. I love that saying because you just talking to somebody about. That's why sometimes you have you have a drive to just, if something's going on, you got to just say it to somebody. Like,
Yeah.
dude, this shitty situation happened, man. This sucks. Like, oh, because it's on your mind, but you get it off your chest and you feel a little bit better about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
That's absolutely right.
So
I think that's the uh unfortunately a bad side effect of the mental health uh system, and how everything has just gone awry in that aspect, because there's a lot of people that are kind of shifting, I think, into drugs and alcohol because they're not getting the help, and then there's a stigma, and they feel ashamed, or they're afraid of getting the help, or afraid of going to a meeting,
of
or
course,
whatever it may
yeah,
be, and then it
yeah,
just continues to get worse and worse. And
yes.
then because
This
they
is
don't
a
get the help
common
from a
problem.
regular
It's a,
doctor,
yeah,
then before they know it, they're dealing with end stage cirrhosis. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
that was a personal experience, is that you watch somebody not want to get help because they're so ashamed of what they're going through, and they're just a person in pain, self-medicating because they don't know anything else.
Well,
And
what's scary too is alcoholism in general is a disease of isolation. Alcoholics are isolationists,
yeah.
and it's even harder for an alcoholic than an average person to come out.
Hmm.
And it's sad. It just
Yeah,
is sad. It's
it
very
is.
sad.
It's really it's hard to um it's hard to pick up on too sometimes,
Of
like I
course.
think like I didn't pick up on it on other people, like you know I would have never really just like put two and two together, with a close friend of mine, who has been, I guess, a closet alcoholic for 20 years and didn't tell, nobody knows at all. Like, he doesn't drink socially, he hides it away, but he's social but doesn't drink socially, so just drinks
Yeah.
and hides it and pretends like he doesn't drink at all ever, like he's sober all the time, but
Yeah.
like drank that entire time. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And he's now, he had to have a major detox and go in, and I mean, I don't even know how that works with like benzos and stuff. It was bananas, but
Well, detoxing from
he's
benzos is really bad.
yeah. Well, no, they used benzos to detox him from alcohol.
I know, because
Oh yeah,
alcohol withdrawal, the only two things that'll kill you from withdrawal is benzos and
benz.
alcohol.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. The only two things that can actually kill you from withdrawal. Yep,
yeah. It's fucking crazy, and
it is.
I mean, he's good. Obviously not gonna bring up who it is or anything because it's not my spot, but he's doing great now. He's 2 years sober. And I
Great.
know
That's awesome.
for sure because I just saw it on Facebook the
That's
other day.
great news,
It
man.
is. He's doing really great, and he's got a kid, and he's got his own stuff going on, but he's got a year and a half year old, one and a
Yeah.
half year old. So good things. But I feel optimistic about, this type of back and forth through technology. I think we can bridge the divisiveness that's happening right now, the binary bullshit. Because you're right, everybody's just fucking typing away angry shit, or they misinterpret it, and everything is just a mess because of it.
It is.
And
Well, let me ask you a question. Um, when I told you about the minimum wage, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the minimum wage, well, I've heard the story that you were talking about, and kind of the backlog also, and how that kind of ties in later into the dark aspects of Labor Day and labor riots and all that shit. It's fucking bananas. But I do agree with you that the minimum wage is something that, one, it is roots in some really awful roots,
Yeah.
created. But
Well,
moreover, it's not designed to really help
it's
workers.
not. It wasn't.
And it was more for kids because they wanted to still have child labor. Let's face it, they
Well,
wanted to
no.
have child labor too.
But the first minimum wage was actually to try to unemploy black people. There's no
Right,
mincing the
exactly.
words about it.
Well, because they'd rather
Then
have
child labor
white
laws,
kids
child
than
labor
black
laws
people.
child labor laws came into play after. I mean, there's different variables of it.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm against it is because I know the facts about it, and I
Right.
know the history of it, and I also know the effects of it. Most people don't know either. And so when I say, hey, I think it's bad, they go, well, you must hate poor people.
No,
You must be racist. You see
that's
what I'm saying?
crazy. Yeah,
It's
no,
like,
I think
no,
that's
no,
nuts.
I'm trying to actually help, not
Right,
hurt.
right, right.
But on the on the internet model, that's how it comes off.
Oh yeah, because
Oh,
it's
you
this.
just want people to be poor, huh?
Well,
You must
everybody's getting boxed now. They're
some
boxed in these
guy
little
some
boxes.
yeah, I had some guy say you must have grown up really privileged because of my viewpoint on minimum wage. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I'm like,
You know
fuck
what I'm
off,
saying?
dude. He has no idea who you are. He
He
doesn't
has
know anything about your life.
he
Like,
doesn't know that my mother was a drug prostitute. He has no idea that I grew up poor. He has no idea about me being deaf with Tourette's. He doesn't know any of my story. Okay?
yeah.
He doesn't
Fuck
know
him.
me getting sober in jail. He doesn't know
Yeah,
any of that. Okay. But people make these grand sweeping conclusions like they know what they're talking
all the
about. You know what I'm
time.
saying? So,
It
you know,
sucks.
but again, that's that form. That's that. It's a very toxic. I think it has a very negative effect on people too, with anxiety and
It's the disconnect of actual real human interaction, right? Because you're interacting, but from a veil, and you can be awful to that person, you can be nice to that person, you can watch a video of their cousin getting their head cut off and fucking, the Middle East. Like, you can fucking see whatever you want, be disconnected from reality on the
right.
internet. That is the thing that I think is causing the most problems, is our utter disconnect from what's really happening. And it's also paved a way for cognitive dissonance too, where people
Yes.
are just believing in non-facts and shit. Like, I'm so
Well,
stuck in the middle, and it's fucking driving me nuts because I feel like I'm torn between both sides of things all the time, because I'm not okay. Like, there objective facts, sorry, personal facts and objective truths are like two very different things. Like, personal
well,
truths and objective truths is what I mean. Sorry, a personal truth is, I believe in my creator, that he made me, and blah, blah. That's a personal truth. That's personally you believe that. um, an objective truth would be that if I drop something, it's going to fall, and then you can measure it about 100,000 times. It's going to get the same result.
yes.
Gravity, i.e.,
Correct.
science.
Well, and when you said cognitive dissonance, people feel that when their assumptions are challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And
They burrow deeper into
when
the hole.
when somebody tells me that they are anti-racism, and I proceed to tell them about the minimum wage, the Davis-Bacon Act, and where you can see the congressional hearings to this day about them talking about trying to unemploy black people. And I tell them the negative effects beyond the racist history of it. I tell them the actual economic effects, how it hurts people, and they still support it. That tells me that the cognitive dissonance is so strong that even me presenting these facts and you
It's not
still
enough.
support it,
Yeah.
then I have nothing for you. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like,
you can't, because you can't change their mind with facts. You can't change their mind with anything, man. There's no talking to that
right,
person anymore.
right.
Right.
You know, I used to be a big proponent of the minimum wage and raising the minimum wage, and particularly when I was younger. And my viewpoint changed on it. And that, you know,
I can't blame you. I do feel the same way in the aspect that I feel like if your job isn't doing what you want, like I also am very much on the do what sets you on fire in life kind of kick too, right? Like I feel like you live once. Why do the McDonald's job? Go
oh,
fucking be a bit an artist and fucking throw
oh,
fucking
but the
dog shit on the wall,
McDonald's
make a
job,
Jackson Pollock. I don't know.
right?
Do
But
whatever sets you on fire.
yeah, the McDonald's job is fine when you're young.
Yeah, when you're young.
That's
But
the
like don't give
point.
up on life at 20. Like what the
Yeah,
fuck?
it's fine when you're young, and that's what those jobs are great for. It's a springboard to get you somewhere else. I
Sure.
worked minimum wage when I was
Same.
younger. You know, I
Oh
used to
yeah.
make. I remember working at Christmas tree shops when I was
I loved
17,
it.
making $6.75 an hour. You know, that's just
I worked at 14 and a half. I was only allowed to work like 5 hours a week. I was working at Harvey's Bakery. It was the first job working as a dishwasher down in Dover, New Hampshire. And I loved that job. I had money. I was able to buy CDs.
yeah,
The anti-skip Walkman. That was my
yeah.
jam, dude. Listen to Around the Fur, dude. I was, oh man. Good times, and it's so funny because kids now and they're gonna have an idea what it's like to try to keep your Discman only shaken so many times within an interval of so many times in a minute.
Dude, I was so good at it. I would skateboard with it.
Me too, man.
I'll never forget.
Awesome.
I used to take the the headphone cable and hold it a very particular way.
That's
and like
fucking
just,
awesome.
You know what I mean? And just everything
We all
about
had our
you
tricks,
know?
right?
I mean, I remember going through batteries.
Yep.
Dude, batteries, that was a battle.
Oh, dude, I go right back to fucking cassettes when I used to wind the cassettes with my fucking pencil so I didn't have to waste my batteries for rewinding tapes, dude.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, yeah, dude. All the little tricks. And
Dude,
I mean, and it transferred right into CDs, like you were talking about, like trying to get the fucking Walkman in your pocket right and had it, you know, slightly vertical for so long, or, you know, and eventually it got better so you could get like
well, I remember when they came out with the 8-second anti-skip. And then it was like 20-second anti-skip. And then it's like 40-second anti-skip. Then it's like 1 minute anti-skip. Like it would, you know. But hey, that's advancement. That's the market advancing technology.
That's right. No, and this is why I'm always a strong proponent of I get eaten alive on both sides. I feel like stuck right in the middle. Like Republicans attack me, or you know, liberals attack me, and like I always try to look at all perspectives because I understand like people aren't trying to do that often. Like nobody's really trying to see what everybody else is saying. They're just trying to, you know, get their point and talk over their friends. Sorry about that, by the way. No,
it's true.
But we get passionate about things, and so that's okay. But to not listen to somebody else when they provide facts is a whole other thing. So you know, I got off track.
Well, there's also the conundrum of having a set of facts be what they are and having two viewpoints of it.
That's true. Yeah.
And again, and what does that come down to? That comes down to the lens in which you see things. You know, like
perspective. Yeah.
The perspective of how you see things, you know?
Yeah.
Like I had said about, you know, the inequality thing. Inequality is going to exist. So let's learn to focus on what we can fix. What can we fix? Trying to help people get out of poverty. That's a good mission. Not worrying about inequality, because you can't remove inequality. Let's remove poverty as instead. You see what I'm saying?
Let's solve the world's, you know
what?
Anger problem. The whole world. We're going to solve anger worldwide.
Jeff Bezos is worth 179 billion right now. He's absolutely so insanely wealthy.
Oh no!
You know what? I don't
he's
think
worth
about it.
more. He's the first person to be worth $1 trillion ever in human history, and that was a month and a half ago.
Well, he hasn't got to $1 trillion yet.
Trillion.
Maybe his company did.
His company is.
No,
you're right.
I'm saying his
wait. His personal growth. I actually think he himself is worth $1 trillion. Look this up because I think.
Well, that was quick then.
Pandemic rockets things pretty fast. But
Yeah.
I could
Okay, so Jeff Bezos is worth 185 billion
okay,
dollars.
so it must be
So
Amazon that's worth
his
a trillion.
company net worth, would
Just reached a trillion.
so but here's the thing. The guy's incredibly rich.
Yeah.
I don't think about it at all. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I
matter
don't.
to me.
Me neither.
I think about what I need to do in my everyday life.
I don't, and I also don't dislike him. So I that was the thing I was trying to
Well,
emphasize earlier.
right.
Is that like I think that the way he got where he got, he did everything he was supposed to do. He followed the law, and he's
He
now
did.
rich because of it.
He did.
So,
Well,
and
but he
he
provided for people, and people
oh,
gave him.
absolutely. I fucking love Amazon, dude. Amazon's the best thing in my life. I literally am disabled. I can't walk around the fucking store. It sucks. And Amazon makes my life so much fucking easier because of it.
Right.
And it just is a fact of reality.
It's true. It's true.
And I pay for it, and I will continue to pay for it.
Well, when you
Proud
said
consumer.
when you said they're eating Walmart's lunch, is because they've advanced the way to get you the stuff even better. And
For sure.
the thing to understand too, it's like they got their wealth by people voluntarily giving them their money.
Absolutely.
We're all guilty of giving them our money, but they've given us something in return.
Yeah.
So there are no solutions, there are trade-offs. And
it was a better value for everybody.
What's that?
Right? It was a better value for everybody.
It
The
is.
Whole Foods guy just made this argument on fucking, I can't believe I'm making the Whole Foods guy argument on Joe Rogan the other day. The owner, the CEO of Whole Foods was arguing, not really arguing, just they were, back and forth dialogue that basically the capitalism and the circumstance makes everybody's lives better. The customer benefits because they're getting a good deal. The guy trucking it benefits because he's making a living. The business is making a profit. There's all these different facets that it brings all of it up, as long as there's not heavy interference from government subsidies or government intervention.
Another thing to understand is every single thing in this world comes down to incentive.
Yeah.
Okay. When you remove incentive, you remove production. When you remove production, somebody loses.
Well, it's like removing hope, like you were saying earlier, though.
Well,
right?
But that's a part of it.
It's the same thing.
Walter Williams is my second favorite educator of all time, and he's brilliant. And I think he's like 87 years old now, and he's an incredible guy. And he was talking about the minimum wage 50 years ago, saying, why do we have this? This is bad. But and he takes it even personally because he's a black man too, which he knows the history of it. But moving on from that, he says the farmer in Iowa, the cattle farmer in Iowa, gets up every morning, he tends to his cows to make sure that New Yorkers have his steak. Does he care about New Yorkers? He probably isn't even fond of New Yorkers.
Right.
I'm not fond of New Yorkers.
Yeah.
But if I'm a farmer and I'm selling cattle, it's in my best interest to raise this cattle and to get it to where it needs to go.
Right.
I'm not worried about who's buying it. I'm worried about me. Because I'm worried about me, that production process happens.
Yeah.
And then somebody slaughters the animal and packages it. And then somebody ships it. And then someone receives it. And then someone cooks it. And then someone brings it out to the table to the person. And then the person eats the meal and then pays the tab. And every single step of that process was an individual looking out for their own. And as a result of that, we have the Adam Smith economics.
Yeah. I think it's crazy that we have to fucking lay it out like that. Like, because I feel like I've had to say the exact thing that you just fucking said to somebody about a million goddamn times, which is just basic fucking economics.
Yes.
Why the fuck are not more people just understanding basic economics, let alone when we get into the well, I hear these fucking mouth breathers, no offense to anybody, but they're like rah 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 about socialism, and they don't know the fucking first thing about economics to even go, well, UBI, that's socialism. The fuck it is, dude. Changing the means of production from from fucking Folgers to Victory brand government coffee. That's socialism. Okay.
If someone does say it's
socialism, and you don't have, Yamaha, you don't have Samsung, you don't have brands, and you just have the government brand, that's socialism,
Well, it's a socialist idea.
UBI is not. a socialist
Well, no,
idea.
it is. It's a socialist
No, it's not.
idea.
It was proposed by Milton Friedman under the form of a
Yeah,
negative
yeah.
income tax.
Well,
But
Milton Friedman also helped draft the New Deal back in the 20s, and he regrets it. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
he,
No, he was proposing something very different, just like Obama was proposing something very different than what happened with Obamacare. Like that's how it always happened.
uh,
Politician says this is something, and then it transforms into something alien.
well,
And
because the Obamacare system can't really work as constituted.
right,
It
right.
needs to be left up.
But a
That's
UBI, a
another
basic
wormhole.
income, a universal basic income, isn't. It's
But
maybe you could say it's a social safety net, but it's really just capitalism that doesn't start at zero. You know, you're
well,
providing. Um, you,
mm,
you
it's
don't,
still a socialist
you
idea because it's getting dispersed throughout.
you're just put no, you're just creating a bottom floor for capitalism. That's all. Bottom consumer
I
floor.
guess it's semantics, I guess, but
Yeah, you could look at it for it's the same thing as negative income tax versus UBI. It's semantics. You could say, well, negative income tax versus UBI,
right,
they're the same thing if you're getting the money back and you're not paying
yeah.
that in taxes. So, yeah, you're right. It is totally semantic, and it could
Um,
the lens.
listen, you mentioned basic economics.
Yeah,
I just want to plug this one more time.
sure.
The book that changed my life. I'm dead serious when I say
Thomas
this.
Sowell.
Thomas
Yeah,
Sowell's
yeah, yeah. No,
Basic Economics.
yeah. I
And
read
you
it.
can go, if anyone's interested, you can go on YouTube and just type in Thomas Sowell Basic Economics. You can listen to the audiobook.
Highly
And
recommend it.
I've listened to it numerous times, and I will tell you, it's very boring. And the narrator doesn't really make it very exciting.
Oh
But
no, they never do.
I learned so much about what I've had so many false beliefs about the world until I and Soul is so incredible. I funneled my way up to him because I can't find anybody above him in the sense that he'll write a 600-page book. He'll put 120 pages of notes and citations of where to find everything, and you cannot dispute the man. Everything here's the facts. Here's where to find
What
them.
year was he born?
Oh, well, geez. So Thomas Sowell a couple months ago just turned 90. So that means he was born in 1930.
Cats meowing at the door.
So
That's crazy. I didn't.
Thomas Sowell published his 56th book the day before he turned 90.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's bananas.
And it's called Charter Schools and Their Enemies.
Huh.
When it's a tremendous book, but
I've only read the basic economics thing, but I mean that's like textbook literature.
but it
Economics.
explains well, but the thing is it seems so rudimentary, but it explains so many things
It does. It's
well,
just hard to get through.
and
for a lot of people.
looking at things realistically, like like the whole equality conversation. Nothing on this earth has ever been equal. No society that's ever competed has had equal results. If you can't produce equality from two people being born under the same roof with the same parents, what makes you think you're gonna achieve equality with people of different genders, races, ages, upbringings,
Oh,
situations?
I think as far as an experiment, we've done pretty good considering everything. I think that this country
Yeah.
is continuing to be an American experiment. Everything that just happened in the election, everything that's happening right now with the Supreme Courts, it's keeping itself. It's rickety as fuck right now. Things are crazy, but it's still maintaining its glory, right? It's
It is.
even I know there's a lot of people that are like, the election's rigged, but it's like, no, the Supreme Court is hashing that shit out. And that's the best part about this is that we have these different stop gates, and it's not perfect at all. But this is the
Well,
best thing we've ever had to as close to perfect as a society, as species, really.
correct.
If you think about it,
Correct.
it
Well,
really you
well,
can't.
Thomas Sowell always says, "Hey, it's the worst system out there, except for all the others." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it
it's
is
pretty
not
solid. Yeah.
it is not perfect, but again, in life there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be always some suck involved, but for the betterment of the people and the betterment of the good of people, it's the best one we got.
Well, if you look, and this is the thing I always try to hammer home with the socialist idea, because I've read Karl Marx and all that stuff a lot of
I
time. We were
have to.
talking about that, and it's good
Yep.
that we do that because, and this is the thing that I was just saying, I I know people are like rolling their eyes. I'm sure we've got plenty of liberal listeners, and I'm sure that they're just like, fuck all this, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's important to, even if you don't agree, to read the other perspective so you can better understand your own perspective.
Yeah, and actually, it's
That's
fun
why read Marx. That's why
if
you
you
read
know.
Soul. You read everything and take your opinion from there, you know?
Yeah, if you know Karl Marx, he do you know the story of Karl Marx? I
Yes.
think his dad owned a milling business or something, and you know the connection to Lenin,
Yeah. And the
Leninism,
whole
Marxism, they
communist.
kind of tie together.
Yeah.
They both had a lot of writings.
Right.
Basically, Karl Marx was I don't know how to say it. He was a failed businessman, and he was very bitter about it.
Yeah. And he
Um,
took it out on the bourgeoisie.
yeah, and I understand some of his theories. The problem is we want to be able to have fun in life and do nothing but fun and serve our purpose. But the reality is we can't survive like that.
I feel like he's overly optimistic about people in a way that like he is and he isn't. Like he's negative in all these other ways, but then he's like overly optimistic in this other lens that like people are just gonna do the altruistic thing all the time, and that's just
Yeah.
never been the fucking case ever
Yes.
in human history, ever.
Absolutely.
And it never
Absolutely.
fucking will be because people are me first. That's how it's always been, and you just have to work around me first
Well, it's
the best way you
okay. You
can.
know, it's okay to be me first and not hurt people.
Yeah.
But it's not okay to be me
Non-aggression
first.
principle.
What's that?
Non-aggression principle. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I just think it's you know, you can be me for I mean, again, that's how the whole free market thing works. I mean, you know, a big thing that if you look back to Adam Smith's writings when he was basically creating this framework, he basically was saying he feels that although people will do bad things, the majority of people will do good things, and that'll be enough to to have things run okay. And that's basically been true. Most people you know are probably decent people, but you probably know some bad people, or you've known some
Yeah.
bad people, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it is, you know.
It's funny. I heard the same perspective from the other point of view, almost, but like flipped in a way. It's hard to. It's from the last podcast I did actually with it was Matt. He's left leaning Democrat, and we definitely don't see eye to eye on certain things. But it's funny because I was hearing what you said, and I'm like, God, that sounds awful similar to what he said. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the podcast now because it almost sounded like a mirrored perspective, and you almost like they interlock in a weird way. This is the thing that I keep finding is that there's so many things that we agree on more than we disagree on as people, and that it's just the way we say things a lot of times that ends up to be the disruptor.
That's true.
It's our the problem with community the problem of communication, the lost in translation thing, that there's so many times somebody says something a certain way and they mean it uh you know, in the purest intentions, and it's taken completely out of context.
Right.
Uh, but even more so now with the digital era. And I think that like just being able to, geez, even, you know, cut each other off sometimes and argue and get in these vigorous debates, it's better than hammering away on a fucking keyboard, right?
That's true.
God
Yeah.
damn, these people are just like so like, well, I'm gonna get the last word. Yeah, he's gonna read that fucking super long comment. You're right. You nobody who ever reads everything when
I
they
start seeing that. I'm like,
nobody.
but I'm guilty of writing them too.
Yep,
So it's
right.
just, you know,
I know. I say it, and I say it after I literally just wrote something earlier. So yeah, and it's so funny because we say we're observant of all these habits, and yet we still do it. I at the same time, I'm very happy about how much I've cut myself out of fucking social media.
hey, you know what? Life is short, so make sure you spend time, you know, arguing with people on the internet.
Yeah, dude, that's a solid meme, dude. You gotta make that into a meme, man. Because that
I can't. Hey, I
somewhere.
can't take credit for that. Somebody else came up with that.
Oh, really? Oh, dude.
Yeah, it was like a guy sitting
solid.
in a chair, and he's like, "Life is short. Make sure you spend as much time as possible arguing with people on the internet."
Yeah, that's solid, man. It really, because that's exactly what's going on. You know, people are so
True.
wrapped up.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you sat on your couch all day on your Sunday and it spent 6 hours and you were on Facebook the whole time.
True, man.
um, I really can't thank you enough for coming on. And I've only got one last question before we let you go, because you've definitely been a solid guest. This has been awesome dialogue.
It's been fun, brother.
Back and
Yeah.
forth, man. There's not enough of this type of conversation. And I say that
We'll have to do it again.
Stereotype from me. If the listeners, like, I always say the same fucking thing. I know I hear this in the comments sometimes. It's like, you say the same shit every time. I do. It's not enough that we have these conversations as people right now, and we got to keep doing it, because if everybody start your own podcast, do whatever you need.
Let's do it again sometime soon, man. Maybe
absolutely
again. Let's get together in a month or two and just do this again.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I encourage everybody listen out there, start your own podcast, get the ball rolling, because there's no such thing as the FCC anymore. They got their lunch got ate. Before you leave, aliens. Every guest, it's gonna be a thing at the end of every episode, I guess, now from now on, and people are probably laughing in the future when they hear this, once it's, we're not live. So aliens. Not even aliens. Fuck aliens. We're not even gonna get there because we haven't arrived there yet. We only know about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. What do you think they are? They're here. It's proof.
Well, I don't know enough, but I will say this. I've always believed. I watched a documentary this winter, a 7-episode documentary about space. And when I learned about how big space is projected to be, or expected to be, or assumed, rather.
This is my wheelhouse, so I'm so excited.
There is almost no chance that we are the only things out there.
No, there is no chance, actually. Mathematically, it's impossible.
I mean, well, I leave that little sliver of a doubt in my mind, because maybe we're luckily the only planet, but
we exist. The fact that we exist makes it mathematically impossible, and the amount of stars and that's the argument that people are making right now. Is it almost, or is it mathematically impossible? And they're saying entropy is the piece to that equation that makes it impossible.
If there's other life somewhere, but it might be so far away.
Right. The Drake equation thing. We were just talking about this in the last podcast.
And how many times have you had the conversation where it could be so far away and they could be wondering, hey, is there other life out there?
Yeah, that's it. Well, and then like the Christmas tree thing, right? Like one light comes on while the other one's off, and then that light goes out and the other one comes on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then another one comes on, and it's like they're never on at the same time to make contact because of the amount of time and vast space.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is like right now I know that it's getting late, so I don't want to hold you up, but this is really, especially if you haven't looked into it, this over the pandemic, this fucking United States government and the Pentagon have released officially saying that we are being basically visited by unidentified aerial phenomena. We don't know where they're from. They defy physics as we know it. They literally blip into and out of existence. And on fucking radar. And like Marco Rubio was just talking about this the other day, and they're bringing it to Congress now because they're going over actual installations, like American military installations. And this is the thing that you should listen to above all, the interview with Commander David Fravor and Joe Rogan. He's the guy who basically chased the aliens and not aliens, UFO, UAP, in a jet. Listen to that story. Anyway,
I'll check it out.
It's something mind blowing, really mind blowing. But I would say that, especially if something you're digging into, start typing on CNN, look at some of the stuff, because there was these major releases, and then now you can go on the government websites and verify everything now because of the Freedom of Information Act. It's pretty I think it's kind of cool. If you can dig through all the fucking bullshit. The files are fucking, they make it monotonous so you can never find it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Coming up with info, which is what we do here at Abstract Transmissions. On that note, we really, really, really appreciate all the listeners that stick through some of these 2-hour-long conversations over in Australia and wherever abroad. I can't thank you enough. If you can, And you too, if you get a chance, subscribe, or if you think somebody is interested in this type of podcast, spread the word, because we're new to YouTube because of COVID.
Yep.
So before we were
Right.
doing in-person interviews, and it's tough. We don't have much of a presence on YouTube, only because everything is, well, most of everybody who listens is through Apple and
Right.
Google Play and Spotify and all that stuff, Stitcher here and there. But YouTube's something we're trying to pick up on. So we appreciate everybody listening, and we appreciate you above all for coming on to Abstract Transmissions.
Dude,
and,
it was a lot of fun, man.
Thank you for having. I haven't had this much of a and no offense to any other guest, but real vigorous back and forth, especially when it comes to economics.
Yeah,
Some
I love
people
economics,
fell
man.
asleep at the wheel when we were listening to
Hey,
this
we
one,
just
probably,
we
but
just
I
got
love
the
it.
tip of the iceberg. We could do
Fucking for real,
do
dude.
episode 2 next time. We can
Absolutely
dig deeper into some of this stuff.
For real.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your time, man.
Of course, brother.
Thank you, and everybody listening. And as always, here at Abstract Transmissions, we like to waste your time with wonderful facts about aliens and/or economics, from the spectrums, one or the other. Be safe out there. Be friendly. Talk more. Type less. As always, abstract here, abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.